shout out to him. You see Zach Turgeon on your right. He's playing mono red mod catcher, and Erik Smith, we had on camera earlier, 5-1, took his loss on camera to Ross Miriam playing elves.
Erik Smith, a former Invitational champion, took down the Invitational last year in Somerset, and we're going to see him lead off with an Underground Sea and get this thing started.
So Erik's list, playing Esper Deathblade, of course, very, very much exposed to the card Blood Moon, which Zach plays numerous copies of.
Yeah, and Erik Smith's going to lead off with the Thoughtseize and get a chance to clear out these Blood Moon effects before they come down. We can see from this hand that Zach Turgeon could have actually cast that Magus of the Moon on turn 1 with Ancient Tomb and Simian Spirit Guide.
So you see the hand here that Zach has. Interested to see what Erik's going to take here, but I have to imagine just Magus of the Moon's going to hit it.
I would think so. Trinisphere, Magus of the Moon, and Simian Spirit Guide. The possible targets. Interestingly, he can take Magus of the Moon, but that doesn't stop him from getting Trinisphere. So he really didn't have a way to stop Zach from shutting him out of the game there. Yeah. And Zach, of course, still has that line, so it looks like he is going to play a Trinisphere.
So we'll see how devastating this opening is for Erik. There's some mixture of his hands that care very much about this, and some that don't care very much at all. It's really predicated on him getting to his 3rd mana.
Yeah, Trinisphere, one of those cards that prompts a lot of judge calls. Of course, the biggest source of confusion, how does it work with spells that are quote-unquote free? The answer is it still does. You have to pay 3 no matter what, so Force of Will still costs 3. In the case of Erik Smith's Esper Deathblade deck, the big card he's looking for now is True Name Nemesis. True Name Nemesis still costs 3, Trinisphere or no. And Erik Smith playing a 2nd fetch land to go with the one he played on turn 2, fetching up 2 lands. So moving straight for a 3-drop. Again, this could be a printed 3-drop, or it actually could just be any spell.
Now Erik's hand is more or less operative. It's still going to be on the slow side. He can't, for example, brainstorm and plow in the same turn. There is still some liability here against the card Blood Moon, but Erik's hand is now at least functional.
Yeah, and I believe I see the Boogeyman himself. Tucked in the back there was a True Name Nemesis, but Erik is actually going to kick things off first with Vendilion Click. Sees Krenko Mob Boss, along with a Crow Mox and some lands.
So Zach really needs to find one of his pieces of real action here. He can no longer fend off Erik.
Yeah, and these kind of stompy decks actually regularly have this problem where they're just a lot of air if you can stop their 1 or 2 really significant pieces in the first couple of turns.
So looks like we have some sort of sword, Fire and Ice.
Yes, that is a Sword of Fire and Ice from Modern Masters, I believe. And there is True Name Nemesis.
So now Zach very much under the gun. Needs to find something significant and quickly. Not a lot of ways in his deck to lock out attackers. So there's no Ensnaring Bridge type effect here.
He does have them in the sideboard, it looks like. But yeah, it looks like no actual way to get a True Name Nemesis off the board in Zach Turgeon's main deck. So gonna be lights out pretty quickly, it looks like. Erik Smith leads off with a Stoneforge Mystic, paying 3 thanks to Trinisphere, and gonna fetch the Batterskull, which doesn't actually speed up his clock, so kind of just going through the motions there.
So as lopsided this game looked, keep in mind that without a turn 1 Thoughtseize from Erik, he is basically locked
It would have looked just as lopsided the other direction. Or it just based on the die roll. If Zach had been on the play, then yeah, Erik would have never had an opportunity to cast that Thoughtseize, and Erik Smith's lands would have been mountains. And so Erik Smith going to take down game 1 thanks to a timely Thoughtseize, and we will be moving on to the sideboards.
So I got Zach's sideboard here, 2 Kotha's Hammer, Boar Tusk, Liege, 2 Sulfur Elementals, an Emrakul, a Goblin Sharpshooter, a Dismember, a Sting Scourger, 3 copies of Ensnaring Bridge, and 3 Ley Lines of the Void. I think Koth is pretty solid in this matchup. Erik's probably not going to be flush with that many answers. I would imagine it's more for Abrupt Decay matchups, but should be fine here.
For Abrupt Decays, he actually mentioned specifically that he brings it in against Miracles as well.
Miracles. That seems like it makes a lot of sense to me, too. I don't know if he's going to want to bring in Snaring Bridge. Esper Deathblade is a deck with a lot of workarounds. It can get Jason to play. It can win in a variety of ways that don't necessarily involve having to attack. So it seems susceptible to a lot of different game plans from Erik, but I do definitely like the Koths.
Yeah, those Ensnaring Bridges, as we mentioned, are actually Zach's only answer to a True Name Nemesis. So that's maybe a reason to lean towards them, but maybe not. Erik Smith, on the other hand, has the standard Deathblade sideboard of 1 and 2 ofs. So we're looking at 2 Zealous Persecution, 1 Vendilion Click, 2 Supreme Verdict, 1 Flusterstorm, 1 Spell Pierce, 2 Surgical Extraction, 1 Force of Will, 1 Thoughtseize, 3 Meddling Mage, and 1 Venser Shaper Savant. I fully expect him to go for the 4th Force of Will. That one seems obvious in a matchup where Zach can make plays on turn 1 that just end the game. 1 Spell Pierce and 1 Flusterstorm likewise, although actually Flusterstorm doesn't stop any of the Blood Moon effects. So
yeah, Zach's deck is mostly creatures and artifacts and enchantments.
Yeah, so scratch that, no Flusterstorm. And then the 1 Thoughtseize, I think. But other than that, basically just going to be kind of making tweaks. That's generally feels like what these the Stoneforge Mystic and Delver decks do with their sideboarding, kind of just fuzzing the numbers and bringing in 1s and 2 ofs of kind of redundant effects that are useful.
It feels like Meddling Mage could be a possible contender for this matchup too.
It could. The issue, Meddling Mage is a little slow for stopping the actual lock pieces. You can't really expect to Meddling Mage a Blood Moon, for example, and even if you did, there's still Magus of the Moon. And the other issue there is you don't actually know what you're dealing with threat-wise. So even if you kind of get to the mid game where you can actually cast spells, you've survived the Blood Moon battle, then you get a Meddling Mage and you want to use it proactively to stop a threat. What do you name? Have you seen Mogcatcher?
Right.
Yeah, Zach also has access to 4 Prophetic Flame Speaker. Those are the big marquee threats he's going for here. But there have been decks in this style, of course, as we mentioned, that have won with things like Hanweir Watchkeep, Rakdos Pit Dragon. There's a lot of variety here, and Erik didn't really see anything to kind of tip the hand there.
It seems like Prophetic Flame Speaker is a significant upgrade to this deck's creature base. It's something that actually can do something pretty powerful and clock kind of fast. Zach with access to some equipment in his deck, so that's a combo with Double Strike and so forth. So that seems like potentially an upgrade for this list, although not always the easiest to cast because there's so many 2-mana lands.
Yeah, he actually mentioned that specifically, that it was a little bit more work to get it into play, but well worth it, particularly because this deck actually kind of exhausts its resources quickly. It has Chrome Moxes, Simian Spirit Guides, often redundant lock effects once it gets one in play. So a lot of card disadvantage and kind of virtual card disadvantage. So Prophetic Flame Speaker really makes up ground if you can get it going. And we got the players taking a look at their hands, both in the tank here. These Blood Moon decks, I've never played one, but I get the impression that you've got to mulligan really aggressively with them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's all about turn 1 with this deck.
Absolutely.
Maybe turn 2.
Okay, and Zach Turgeon is going to lead off with a Cavern of Souls naming Human and a Chrome Mox exiling Siege Gang Commander. And I see a Trinisphere, or not Trinisphere, Chalice of the Void.
So Chalice on 1 locks out a fair share of Erik's decks, but unlike decks like Rug Delver, he can work around this. Stoneforge Mystic still alive, True Day Nemesis, and so forth.
Yeah. Chalice on 1, particularly on kind of turn 0 for Erik, is a significant obstacle because it keeps him from developing his mana. He can't cast set Deathrite Shaman. It's going to keep him from sculpting his hand with things like Brainstorm and Ponder. But Erik's actual threats, of course, are still live. So Erik not able to cast anything on turn 1. Zach has the 3rd land, notably the mana source that can now cast Blood Moon effects, and is going to cast a Blood Moon effect, cast Magus of the Moon. Erik Smith has an opportunity to crack Polluted Delta in response. Does he have basic lands in his deck? He does not.
And this is being done through a Cavern of Souls, so
yes,
Force of Will is not operative here.
Yes, Cavern of Souls naming Human, Magus of the Moon is in fact a human, so no way for Erik to interact, and again, no way for him to cast spells. And I think we're basically in game over mode here.
Well, Zach can still cast a Batterskull. Let's keep that in mind.
Yeah,
There's still a Batterskull.
Erik can cast Batterskull, so that is the one threat. Looks like actual no way in main or side to get this Magus of the Moon off the board. Actually, do you have a Dismember? No, he does not. Okay. So yeah, it is actual March to 5 lands and Batterskull or bust here, as Zach's going to look to close things out with Prophetic Flame Speaker.
And this speeds up the clock substantially. At this point, I feel like Erik's probably just playing for information more than anything else. There's some mystery about what's going on in Zach's deck. It had some lock elements, but you don't know exactly what's going on. And I think Erik knows he's locked, but wants to play this out just to see what's up.
Yeah, and that Prophetic Flame Speaker going to serve up a bunch of cards. Notably, it is going to flip them all into play face up. So Erik's going to get a little more information than normal that way. And there's a Sword of Light and Shadow. So that's going to speed the clock up even further. Zach casts it, has mana left over to equip it to his Prophetic Flame Speaker, should he so desire.
And now, even Batter Skull is not now, because he now has a pro-black attacker and blocker.
Can attack right past that black germ.
So the game is now actually signed and delivered, locked. But again, might as well play out the stretch.
Okay, and gonna move it to Magus of the Moon. So I guess that actually makes sense. That's insurance against Dismember.
Yeah, which you alluded to before.
Dismember or planes into Swords to Plowshares. Erik did crack a polluted Delta, so he wouldn't have been able to get a basic planes even if there was one in his deck.
And so we've exchanged games of lopsided beatdowns thus far.
Yeah, the second Prophetic Flame Speaker going to come down for Zach. Really just doesn't matter what he does from here, though. And yeah, as we see, Erik, out of things to do, just discarding, going to play it out, see what comes up. I believe he is actually dead to this attack. If Zach doesn't even need to move it, but he's going to. Okay, and I guess you have to trigger them before lethal damage is dealt. So he's going to flip up an Ensnaring Bridge and a Simian Spirit Guide before dealing lethal damage. So a little bit of crucial information there at the very end, flips up that Ensnaring Bridge.
And that's why you like Erik playing it out there. There is some uncertainty with what's going on in Zach's deck very clearly. So play it out and see what he reveals to those Prophetic Flame Speakers. Give yourself a little more information to work with.
Now the question is, what can Erik do with that information? Now that he has seen multiple Prophetic Flame Speakers, I think he can kind of trust that that's Zach's threat that he's leaning on. He actually saw Krenko Mob Boss in game 1, which, if he's really up on his legacy game, that might tell him that there are Mog Catchers running around, but that's a stretch. I don't know if it would tell me that.
I don't know how looped into the format I would have to be able to read, oh, this is the Mog Catcher build of Dragon Stompy upon seeing Krenko Mob Boss.
Yeah, you'd have to be more looped into the format than I am, and I travel to legacy tournaments and watch people play them every week.
Right.
So yeah, he sees the threats, and of course he saw Ensnaring Bridge. So the question is, does he want to make adjustments after going into game 3 to prepare for that?
Well, the big question to me now is, does Meddling Mage become more attractive? You have a little more information to work with. You're on the play. Is it a card that you can use now to protect yourself against certain cards?
And it is. Being on the play helps significantly. Of course, it's still too slow to stop a turn 1 effect, like a turn 1 Blood Moon. But if you have another way to interact, like a Force of Will to stop the thing on turn 1, a Spell Pierce, even a Thoughtseize, you somehow use the Thoughtseize to buy a turn by taking the Chrome Mox to make it a turn 2 Blood Moon instead of a turn 1 Blood Moon, something like that, then Meddling Mage actually becomes a pretty significant way to interact.
Yeah, the thing is, we're not talking about cutting any of the turn 0 or 1 mana disruption. No. It's not like Meddling Mage is coming in at the expense of Thoughtseize or Spell Pierce or any of those kind of cards. So is it better than any of your other ways to win the game? I think the answer may be yes.
The answer is likely yes. Yeah, Erik has a lot of, I don't want to say expensive, but expensive in the sense that you can't cast them on turn 1. He has things like Liliana of the Veil, which doesn't seem great to me. He has, honestly, the Jaces don't seem great either, but it feels weird cutting Jace. A Council's Judgment, some True Name Nemesis could go, honestly.
Yeah, True Name Nemesis, now that you've seen Ensnaring Bridge is the card that stands out to me. Because you've seen Ensnaring Bridge, you don't really want to modify your deck dramatically to fight against that card. So I'd probably leave in Jaces, because Jace is a way to win the game with Ensnaring Bridge blocking you out.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So Liliana of the Veils, I think, are safe to cut. I guess the one Council's Judgment, I kind of want that too, against things like Trinisphere and Chalice. So really, not a lot of wiggle room. All of these effects are actually pretty good. And Erik is going to get on the board for the decider with a turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, which...
It's important. Let's see what Zach can do here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no fetch land on Erik's side, so if he has a lock piece and Erik can't stop it, that's going to be good.
And he is going to sort of lock with a turn 1 Chalice for 1. Turn 1 Chalice, so much worse on the draw than it is on the play. Erik Smith already has his mana development. He could play a Turgeon Nemesis this turn if he likes, assuming he has it.
I'm curious to see if this Chalice is even going to interfere with Erik at all. On the play with a Deathrite Shaman, and again, this is not Blue-White Red Delver, this is not Rug Delver.
Right.
Eric's card goes, Stoneforge Mystic into Liliana or Turgeon Nemesis into Jason the Mind Sculptor. A lot of ways to just ignore a Chalice set on 1.
Yeah, the one casting cost spells in the Deathblade deck are support spells by and large. Very important ones like Deathrite Shaman and Brainstorm, some of the more powerful cards in the format. But the way that Erik actually wants to win the game generally costs 2 in the case of Stoneforge Mystic or 3 in the case of Turgeon Nemesis, Liliana, Dandelion Click. And Turgeon Nemesis is going to show up on turn 2. And Zach is going to play a Cavern of Souls naming Human, but has no further play. And Erik Smith's going to cast a Thoughtseize. That is going to be countered.
Now, I don't know if Erik forgot about that or not. It looked by his expression that he did not, but it's still something that Zach has to announce.
Sure.
So you can still test the waters there.
Yeah, well, something that he has to announce, and actually it's a play that gets a sorcery into the graveyard.
Yeah.
So if Erik wants to have the opportunity to kind of Lava Mancer Zach on his end step by activating the black side of Deathrite Shaman, now he can do that. And Zach is going to play a Mog Catcher, and Erik is going to stop and read it. I do not begrudge him taking a read on Mog Catcher. I probably would have to do that as well.
So, Mog Catcher is one of those cards that's been errated when the creature type overhaul took place.
Really?
So it says Mercenary on the type line, but it is a human for the purposes of Cavern of Souls.
Right. Yeah, okay. I thought you meant that it searched for mercenaries and goblins or something. I was like, okay. All right, and there's Liliana of the Veil for Erik Smith, which is going to clear that Mog Catcher out of the way, keep it from causing any trouble.
And this is the trouble with the deck that Zach has built here. Without a turn 1 lock, when he has to play something resembling Honest Magic, he's not equipped to hang with a deck like Esper Deathblade. He needs to be pushing him out of the game on turn 1 or turn 2 to be able to hang.
Yeah. Has to, again, Chalices, Blood Moons, Trinispheres, has to get them into play immediately and has to have the right one for the job. In this case, we saw Zach with turn 1's Chalice, which just wasn't good enough here. And there's the second Mog Catcher.
Now keep in mind, Erik's removal is basically locked out by this Chalice. Source of Plowshares is not operative.
Yeah, in terms of actually getting this creature off the board, Erik has Liliana of the Veil, which he has used one of his 2 now, and of course he can't use this one again this turn to kill anything. He has 1 Council's Judgment, and 2 Jace the Mind Sculptor. So he could actually play a Jace and bounce the Mog Catcher. He's also we're at the point where he could just race it with this Turgeon Nemesis too. And he is gonna take a swing, drop Zach to 8, and waste away the City of Treaters.
Just trying to keep Zach pinned on mana.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant play because actually Mog Catcher takes 3 mana to activate, I believe. So unless Zach finds a land or a Chrome Mox or a Simian Spirit Guide, something of that nature, he is not going to be able to fetch up a Goblin this turn. He is going to be able to Dismember. So fires off a Dismember, targeting the Deathrite Shaman. It looks like Erik's going to make a mana in response. And that'll do it. So Zach Turgeon can't find a way to get that Turgeon Nemesis off the board. Erik Smith has it looming and takes down the match.
And, Zach showed a little bit of what his deck was capable of there in the second game, but didn't really have the explosive lock that he needed. Erik there with a turn 1 Deathrite Shaman on the play, that invalidates a lot of what Chalice does. If Zach is able to stick a Blood Moon effect through Cavern of Souls, Magus of Moon through the Cavern, then we're talking about a very different game. But Erik being on the play makes such a big difference, and Zach didn't have his most busted opening there, and Erik was able to win in pretty straightforward fashion.
Yeah, Blood Moon deck